why don't we start out, because I did not get back here and start your bio ahead of time. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about you, and then we can just get into the conversation. How's that?
Okay, that's absolutely fine.
Okay.
So now I'm a lecturer and an author, and I've created my own college, specifically a college of the mind. But it obviously didn't start off like that. So my journey has been quite an intriguing one, and I've had some extraordinary experiences, well, quite a few actually. And that has, I think, enriched my classes that I run now. And then I think about sort of 20 years ago, I went into academia and got a couple of degrees, my first degree in psychology. And then I thought, well, this isn't going deep enough. So I want to explore the depths of the mind. And I had questions, a lot of questions. And so I went into do a master's in psychoanalysis, and then the floodgates opened really for me. And I just connected up all the dots. And so I read everything, and I still do. And so what I realized is that my personal background, like a lot of teachers, like a lot of coaches, like what I'd say authentic coaches, have come from quite traumatic backgrounds. And so that was my background. But I think what I learned at university is it's all very good sitting there reading books, but how does that translate in practice? And so I deliberately, I think I was doing 3 jobs and 2 degrees at the time. I put myself into working in a residential home. And then I drew on my personal experiences, my extraordinary experiences. I married that with the professors, what they were saying. They reached a limit and I needed to go further. And I went into metaphysics. And I realized that to be a really good teacher, a really good coach, you need the fundamental of authenticity. And I say that people can smell you. You know, they can smell you from a mile off. So when I'm teaching, I teach all mind subjects, which is unusual. So I have one foot in spirituality, I have one foot in science, and I marry the two really well. I deliberately set out like that because I knew a lot of people couldn't fathom what's the connection, or, you know, are we too theoretical or are we too airy-fairy? You know, at what point does what you're teaching help my life? And so I deliberately set out and gave a broad spectrum. So if, you know, more sciencey people wanted to come in, I taught them course psychology and forensic psychology. So everybody got excited about the dark side of the mind, and still do. So I've been teaching that for over 15 years. I say uniquely teaching it because I still don't see people teaching it the way I do, because I teach a holographic view of it. So I'm not book taught. I'm kind of I guess street taught rather. And so I've got a great sense of humor. I use visualization, and they really responded to that. And I think when you're teaching such a heavy subject, you need to keep it quite light. But at the same time, you've got to be able to answer every question and any question. Whereas at university, I was told, well, if you want an answer, go to the library. But that wasn't good enough, you know. So I can honestly say that nearly 20 years now, and all these years later, I've put the college online so it can be an international college now. And all these years later, there's not one question that I couldn't answer. And also there's not one mind that I can't understand. And a lot of people find that quite an extraordinary statement. But honestly, when you go deep psychology and study it for this many years, there really isn't any more surprises. There's just how to help people with the knowledge that I've got.
That could be a little scary.
What you're telling me. I mean, yeah, it can be terrifying, and I really respect that. I mean, my master's was in psychoanalysis, and I learned a lot about how to be with and coach people in a very scary place in their mind. So I already knew that when people come in to study forensic psychology with me, they probably want to make sense of themselves, or let's speak truth, the darker side of themselves, and some extraordinary experiences. And I was recently on a podcast, and one of the things that I was able to communicate is that I'm so glad I had my own experiences before I went into academia, because if you go into academia, they label everything and medicate everything. And I really don't like these two things. And so it's great having direct personal experience. I mean, you just can't beat that. And um, so yeah, I make light of the dark side, but you know, professionally, I give excellent knowledge, but I also want people to leave feeling relieved that it's not just them, that there is somebody who not only understands but can answer the questions that I didn't get answered, and that at the end of the day kind of simplifies the mind and even normalizes some extreme behavior. And that's why my students keep coming back. They're just relieved.
Yeah, I know you can't give any detail, but can you give us an example of somebody that you might have worked with and helped and how it went?
Yes, when I was studying for a master's, I came across Freud, and one of Freud's case studies was a High Court judge, and he developed schizophrenia. So, in my ignorance at the time, I thought, well, only people who've either done drugs and chemically imbalanced their mind, or they've been in a really bad environment, got no education, those are the people that go on to develop disorders. Well, of course, what did I know? Come across this High Court judge, and I was fascinated. And I thought, so he's got schizophrenia. Um, Not taking anybody's word for anything, I went back to the Latin, I got a dictionary, and schiz means split, and phrenia means of the mind. So it's not actually that scary. You know, the way the media portrays it, it's like a demonization. But then I realized lots of people have schizophrenic psychotic episodes who are lovely, lovely people. And then they have this bombardment of intrusive thinking and dark thoughts, and then I think then they make the mistake of telling a psychiatrist. That's my that's my honest view, because I think what I realized is that it's just that the external pressure is greater than the internal capacity to manage it. And I use the example of an axle on a car. And if you overload your car, you break the axle. So in my mind, in my version, schizophrenia means broken axle. So if you did that to your car, you'd go to a garage, you see. It's not scary, you'd go to a garage, get it repaired. But you see, then people hit the next thing, where are they going to go with that? Because you ask the wrong person and you go down a rabbit hole. You ask me, you can recover and never have that again, and without medication. And that is the difference between an authentic education or educator and coach and somebody that's just book taught.
You know, you said that about being book taught, but if you hadn't been book taught and you always go back to the books, you just expand a lot past the books. You're going beyond that and using some common sense and figuring things out on your own, right?
I mean, common sense is not so common, right?
Yeah. Or maybe it's a lot more common than what we think, and we're just not using it.
You know, the thing is, when I had my experiences, I went to a library, and so I pulled up on, you know, the greats, Carl Jung, um, people that studied esoteric knowledge, and then I would go back to sort of groundedness and draw on my own experiences of how I've healed myself. So it was a collaboration. I really brought together years and years, and I'd written a book. I'd written my first book, Pandora's Panacea. I wrote that in 2007, and people are only just now beginning to understand that book. It'll be another 20 years, really.
You've
But
done several books.
yes, I have written, well, I've written three books. I've got another one on the desk here.
Decluttering the Mind and Pandora's Panacea, people watching through the eyes of an analyst.
So
Those
people
all sound good.
That's fascinating. But when people walk into my class, they come from all walks of life. So I've got everybody from people that don't study, haven't got any qualifications, to I've even got a judge in my class. I've got police officers on the forensic. And then I've got people at the forefront of consciousness that are asking some proper questions at the moment. And so I teach to a wide breadth. So those books, so I'd say for people starting off that are just curious about the mind, decluttering the mind is the book, because each chapter I take people into a house, which is the analogy of your mind, and I show how to tidy up your house. And then at the end, I give a little light cleaning and depth cleaning exercises, and they're bite-sized chapters. And so my students love it because they say they can read just 10 minutes and reflect on it before bed. And then the observation, I run courses on psychological observation, which is people watching, you know, and you go to the coffee shop, and I love that. But I didn't just look from a curious point of view. I had the psychoanalytic knowledge of looking for micro cues and non-verbal. And so that book is a collection of articles through my eyes, just being in a supermarket, what I saw, just my reflections on, you know, there's one called Phoenix Lives, which is what happens when your whole life melts down. How do you repair from that? How do you stand back up? How do we become the phoenix? And but the Pandora's Panacea, my first book, is depth, depth, depth. Psychology, metaphysics, spirituality. I name 3 chakras that people even today don't even know about. I put colors to it, and frequency and consciousness. And then in the back, all poetry that spontaneously came out of me. And it was, every poem was after I'd been with somebody. I was looking through their mind, their heart, their trauma. And I wrote the poem, and I didn't realize at the time I wrote archetypal poetry. And so that is a very enlightening book. But here's the thing, I wrote that and published it before I went through some of my most extreme experiences. So I went back to my own book
and read it.
yeah. And can you believe Cathy, I actually dedicated my book to my soul at the time. And then of course your soul is your subconscious mind. So the irony, because I'd written the book, dedicated it to my own mind, and then when I had my extreme experiences, I was able to read my own therapy. Talk about heal thyself.
That's really good. What does a rise in consciousness mean to us personally?
Okay, so I knew this was coming.
Yeah.
I knew 20 years ago. In fact, it was one of the motivators to start my college. It was Hebe College. Now it's the College of the Mind. And I thought, these people don't know enough information. They're going to hit the wall. And I understand that some people are students and quite advanced. Some of my students bounced into class and said, "Oh, we've started doing mindfulness." And it put a chill through me, because I knew already what they didn't know about that. Is that when you raise consciousness, you raise the unconscious at the same time, because we're in the law of equilibrium. And I already knew that what was going to come out of people's unconscious was going to manifest in their lives, and they weren't going to be able to cope with it. So there would be a whole manner of, you know, depending on how much knowledge, how much skill they had at managing it. But, you know, if you start poking about in awakenings and, you know, go to spiritual fairs and things like that, it's all lovely and sparkly, but real enlightenment begins with endarkenment, because what comes out of the subconscious mind is our traumas, our memories, our programming, which has been terrible for all of us. And so what I'm teaching now is not just, you see, for coaches that are listening to this, it's no good anymore just having knowledge. You've got to help people apply it. And everybody's different. So yeah, that's what I've been so busy behind the scenes and teaching classes and writing, but I've opened up the college to now teach coaching, and I've got a few more American students are now jumping onto that, because they all say the same thing. An hour later, they just feel immensely better, because I can draw on spiritual language or psychology proper, or dreams, or decoding the mind, and whatever they need. Yeah, it is a unique coaching, but that's why I called Pandora's Panacea holographic works of art. The hologram is what we're in now. The rise of human consciousness really is an awareness. People are becoming aware, they're becoming consciously aware of their unconscious. And that was why I started the college. I thought they're going to need help with that. And not medication again, just education.
Yeah, no medicine.
No medicine at my school, no.
Um, how do altered states of consciousness, and it's just like you said, some of us decide it's time to go on our journey, and we're going to experience something bigger than what we do watching television or reading a book, or and so how does it contribute to being able to understand ourselves, or does it just make us confused, or do we need a guide?
Well, honestly, you need a guide, but you need the right guide. And there's not many. That's the truth. There's not many. There's a lot of now pop-up gurus. The internet is saturated. We've reached saturation. We've reached misinformation. Everybody thinks they know everything. And as a result, if you approach the wrong coach, truthfully, your mind could smash in sudden awakenings. People's minds smash anyway. They never tell you that. What they're doing now is decaying the ego, because somebody at some point dropped into the collective consciousness that to be spiritual and enlightened, you've got to get rid of your ego. And I'm telling you, do not do that under any circumstances. Your ego is your boundary. It manages your mind. It has all the defense mechanisms. You have to evolve and mature that relationship with your ego. So yes, you can't have it driving the car. It needs to be in the passenger seat. But if you want to fast track into a psychosis, go and meditate for 40 hours at a spiritual convention with pop-up gurus. And by Monday, you'll have a psychosis. And by Tuesday, you'll have paranoia. And if you're lucky, by Wednesday, you'll get in touch with me. And that is, I'm not just being extra bold. I know that I've been studying this area for 30 years. I've had my own experiences for, I'm not even going to say how many years. It's, it says in the Bible, the road is narrow and few find it. And that is the truth. So it's definitely great that people are now questioning, hold on, is this life, all this programming, it's not made us happy, all tired and miserable and broke. And I love that. It's kind of a collective leaving the matrix, leaving the third dimension. But you can't just leave the third dimension and think, oh, I know, I'm just going to be spiritual now. I'm just going to walk around with daisies and that, because I can promise you the first thing that's going to happen is the matrix comes up after you. That all that old programming raises its ugly head and says, where do you think you're going? So you do need somebody to guide you through that. If people can walk gently, they're sensible, they could find their own way. But what's happening, I'm seeing it now, it's too much access to too much higher knowledge, and as a result, it's being misinterpreted, and younger people as well are going into psychosis, and it's very, very sad for me to watch. I've been working so hard to prevent this, but it's all, letting people know, find the right teacher for you. So I tell my students, listen to everybody, watch everybody. Do not be bedazzled by just because they've got a great marketing campaign, just because they look glossy. And anytime I hear the word six figures, to me that's a red flag. If somebody's saying, "Oh, yeah, we've got I think it's that with the decimal point." So you've got 40.
I don't think that everybody has ill intentions. I
No,
just don't think that everybody has it right.
I agree with you completely.
Okay, so culture and religion, we all, I mean, like I grew up a certain way in England. You've got the Church of England, and you grow up with that culture, but also the religious beliefs are ingrained from the time that you're going to school and maybe even born. Um, how does that play into your perception of it all?
That is a brilliant question, Cathy, and thank you for asking it. I've always had deeply spiritual experiences. So at some point, I was 5 years old, and I thought, oh, I'll go into Sunday school and I'll learn about God. And I met this most awful nun, and she told me I was a sinner and that I was going to be punished all my life, and that God wouldn't approve of me. And I hightailed it out of there. But what she'd underestimated is one of the things God had given me, which is boldness. So I got my dictionary, and sin does not mean hellfire and brimstone and go to hell. Sin is an archery term. It just means to fall short of the mark. How do I put this? I'm about to publish some videos that move religion out of the way. I'm going to do it delicately and respectfully. A lot of my students are Catholic, etc. But what I've realized is the Bible isn't a religious book. It's a metaphysical book. And so the way I teach it is I have no interest in joining religions because I teach forensic after all, and I say the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. So you have as many people you wouldn't want to meet in a religion as you do walking down the street. Not all of them, I must just say that. But I just, one of the things that I'm going to put across, I wrote an article recently called How Religion Stole God, because I think there's a calling for everybody now as part of the new era of consciousness to reconnect to, some people call it source, some people call it higher intelligence or universal sacred spirit. I call it God because that's my personal experience. They're asking me now, how do we get there, Carole? And how does this inform my life? And I say, you have to go there first. Personally, I don't go into church unless nobody's there, because then I can hear better. I don't think we need to go into a church anymore. What we need to do is exactly what it says in the Bible, is seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. And that is a conscious statement. And what that means is the kingdom of heaven is your higher consciousness. So it doesn't mean get on the phone, run around, busy yourself, exhaust yourself. It doesn't mean that. It means sit quietly. You don't even have to be in a meditation. You have to go inward and upward and seek ye first your higher consciousness. That's the conversation. And when you get that one right, and you've got that, well, miraculous energy on your side. I saw recently you'd written an article on intuition, and intuition is something I've been teaching for years. And recently I put an audio in the college, the keys to intuition, because that's that conversation. Intuition means to watch over. And so I love that. I love that I know that I've got some amazing higher spirit watching over me, all of my life, actually. And I've faced a lot of opposition, a lot. And I'm sure they're wondering, how is she still standing? Or how I'm still standing is I didn't believe anybody else. I thought, I'm just gonna go back home to my God in my mind, have those conversations, and he'll make sense of it for me. So when I'm this next chapter of, I have some podcasts on the rise of human consciousness. I think that was 2 years ago, but people are only just starting to kind of understand what that means. But I'm in the proper empowerment. It's not where you go to somebody else to get empowered. It's where I give you proper information that when you're right up against it, how can you practically apply what I'm teaching to that terrible experience that's now manifested? So that eventually, you see, you're going to deprogram yourself and return your mind to where it always should have been.
What do you think about technology and artificial intelligence?
When it first came out, I got on my soapbox. It's true to say I banged on about it in every lecture, in every newsletter, in every. I said, "Watch it, people, watch it," because I teach forensics after all, so I know about recording people. I don't have artificial intelligence in my home. I'm not having a standby monitor because these internal home monitors, they are always listening. What I realize is they're always recording too. And the people that are listening are the people that deal with the algorithms. So if you really want to stay sort of anonymous, do not have your primary laptop attached to the internet.
Well,
And
think about it. You've got the uh, ADT, which is, I don't know if you know what that is, but that's
it,
like the surveillance. That's the oh my gosh, it's the alarm system, and
yes,
it's got a camera on you all the time. The television, you're talking into the microphone to that on everything that you want to watch. And
yep,
then got you, and I know when you buy something, I mean, it goes every place because then it shows up every place what you already bought, and then they keep advertising it to you. But yeah, um, do you think
it was
it's
hard.
dangerous?
It was hard getting people to understand that. I mean, the people that created AI, as with everything, as with the atomic bomb, as with everything that's ever been created, it was probably created with good intention. But there's dark energies in this world that hijack these magnificent capabilities. Now that's the problem. Not that it was created, it will be hijacked. And I said to my students, one day you'll be in a hotel room, there'll be a knock on the door, it will say room service. You'll open the door and it'll be a machine gun. And my student said to me, "Oh my God, Carole, you really scare us." And I said, "I want to wake you. I don't want to scare you." Um, so with all of my students, I prepare them on how to walk down a street and how to not get mugged, how to walk down the street. And a lot of what I teach is against what they're teaching in pop psychology. But so the worst thing about AI is that it can be used as a war machine. It's now accessing people's bank accounts, and if you want to send a whole humanity into terror, take their money away. That's what's happening.
Oh yeah, you've got just a straight line in.
Straight line in, and I'm saying to people, what are you doing? Stop putting your data on these search engines. Why are you doing all your banking electronically? I'm really old school and I get a lot of hassle when I go into different banks. I'm still a cash girl because cash makes you anonymous. You see, even when you go and buy petrol, this is from forensic teaching. If somebody buys petrol, buys a sandwich, gets on the train, buys a magazine, you can track their journey all day because of all the receipts. But if you're a cash person, they can't, obviously, but the whole world are being pushed into electronic buying but I'm as anonymous as you can get. Like, ironically, I'm all over social media and public domain, but that is all particularly put.
I'm the opposite. I'm an open book. I'm
Kathy, you need to come
in
to.
trouble.
Let's get you into class.
That's why I've got an alarm system and I have to look through the door, the hole in my door.
But the other thing is that here in England, people are very British, and if somebody knocks on your door, you go and answer it. And the first thing I teach is why. They've intruded, they've crossed your boundary, they're on your property. Why are you opening a door to a stranger? And they say, "Oh, well, I was polite." And I say, "Well, don't be. You don't have to be rude, but you don't have to be."
Right?
They said, "Well, they could see me sitting on the sofa." I said, "They can see me sitting on the sofa, and I
They
don't
put
move."
their hand through your mailboxes.
Honestly, Kathy, I'll have a wall now, and I have a mailbox on the front, I have a parcel box on the front, and on my gate there's a bell, and it says no entry. And you see, we're talking about boundaries. And not just physical boundaries, but psychological boundaries. I'm going to say spiritual boundaries as well. I see so many um, good intention but unqualified therapists. Here's, in my view, I was taught by an excellent analyst, actually, a psychoanalyst. If you're a therapist, you need to get rid of that clipboard, because what you're set, it's a barrier, and it's a power trip too, because you've got the pen, you've got the, and you're writing notes, and they come in, they don't know what's going on. Real proper psychoanalysis, proper trained analysts, you wouldn't dream of going in with a clipboard. I also wouldn't dream of sitting there and not talking. I'm far too interactive. But you see, what you're supposed to do is spend your time with your client, and then after they've gone, that's why you have a 50-minute hour. 50 minutes with your clients, 10 minutes is when you tune into your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings. You write all of them down, because that is what your client's left with you. So now you have a proper analysis, not your clipboard analysis, which is through your own cognitive biases. So if you want to be an excellent analyst and also a nice person, I don't like this whole power trip, clipboard desks, I am a proponent of keeping everything real, warts and all.
I like that. Is it smart to, and if you decide to, how can you deepen your awareness and your consciousness? Can you purposely go in?
Yes, you can. You can, but you need to know how to do that. Yeah. What's going to happen? So let's say you're a lovely person and you've been doing mindfulness and you've been meditating, but all of a sudden you're getting angry. All of a sudden there's a disconnect. And what's happening is the right thing, actually. It feels like the wrong thing, because what's happening is you're bringing down your one of your ego defenses, which lives in what's called the pre-conscious barrier. So it sits between consciousness and the unconscious. As things start to come forward into your conscious awareness, they are actually coming up to be healed. But some people's traumas have been so deeply buried that the last thing they want to do is re-experience it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I say you need the right person. So somebody like myself can contain those projections. A lot of people don't even know what they are, and what does containment mean. And so what will happen if you start to become more aware, more enlightened, at some point, all your subconscious, everything that's in the wardrobe is going to come forward. Now, this is the problem. Now, what are you going to do?
And it comes unbidden, right? I mean, it's not what you're asking for.
It's the last thing you want. On my coaching session recently, on more than one of my coaching sessions recently, which is confirmation that I was right in putting this stuff forward at this time, is they're saying, oh, yeah, I'm really terrified of this thing. And I say, tell me your worst fear. Let's get that vampire out into the light of day. Tell me your worst fear, because they are with the right person to manage whatever that horrible trauma, thought, what could happen in the future, what's happened in the past, whatever it is, let's get it out. And then we're going to rework it. We're going to take the energy out of it, actually. That's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to own it. We're not running anywhere, we're owning it. And then I take them through a process. I call it an alchemical process. But I take them through a process of what do you do with that worst fear? And how can you immediately feel better about your worst fear? So they leave me with the answer to that. Of course, what happens is you deal with that. You can feel, oh, a bit of relief. And then something else, you think, oh, I've forgotten that. And something else can come up. It can come up in dreams. And so part of being a good therapist, an analyst, or a coach or teacher is you have to continually do your own homework, because the other thing that can happen with the lack of insight is that you project that onto your client. I've seen that. I've seen professors do that to their clients, and you would have thought they should have known better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go back to the religion thing.
Sure.
Do a lot of people misinterpret what's happening because of beliefs?
Yeah. So beliefs are your bottom bricks of your house, your psychology, and you shouldn't rush in and smash all your belief systems. I would never rush into somebody's belief system. I have massive respect for that. I have respect for their egos protecting it too. So I am not about to convince, I'm not setting off to convince anybody of anything, but I do also know that behind all of that, your soul knows when it hears the truth, and I speak the truth. And so what happens, everybody's got to find their own way with it. There's a lot of resistance to it, but again, you can smell it. You can smell, hold on, have we been sold up a river? Has this whole religion sold us all up a river? My personal view is yes, it has. Am I religious? Absolutely not. Am I spiritual? Absolutely. Absolutely live with and in grace every minute as much as I can of every day. And so, yes, I think there's been a mass interpretation. It's been to keep the masses down. It's been for social reasons. It's been if you frighten people, you can manipulate them. And if they're, when I just get asking questions and I was told, oh, be quiet, you're upsetting everything. There's not an answer to that. Just, and I remember thinking they seemed scared of me. And I do joke with my students now, but it is the truth. Grown men are scared of me. This little woman, because I can see straight through it all. And my motivation is I'm really cross that we've all suffered so much. I'm really cross. I can't bear that children are put on medication. I can't bear that people get to midlife and say to me, is any of this worth it? I can't bear when I hear they've committed suicide, because that's the last trick of the ego. And if only they just would listen. But so I just have to deliver the perception in the way that I can see it, which is from a higher consciousness, and trust. And then what I've practiced and what every good coach should practice is compassionate detachment. So I deliver it, I drop the seeds in, and I detach from it. I have no need to check that, to check how did they think that went? How did they think I was? How did they? I'm not interested. But I have to keep going back to my authenticity and my integrity, which to me is paramount. That's before anything in this world.
Okay, so if we find the right person to go through it with us, are there benefits to all of us being higher consciousness?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because what has been bred, what's in the DNA of the human consciousness is division. It's shocking when you even put the news on, and even today, people, I'm going to say how it is, the older generation, which I'm slightly in now. So
Me too. I just had a birthday.
do you know? Yeah, it's scary, isn't it? But you see, the whole motivation of the matrix machine is to keep us all divided. And if you keep people seeing a difference, then you can divide them. So actually, my review, I went right under what is even racism, so I have a really contemporary view of that. And my view of racism is very different to anybody in this world at the moment. Because people see differences, so they need to see either a sex difference, a color difference, a cultural difference, a language difference, a height difference, a body size difference.
I don't think that your opinion is different than everybody else's, but you may be the only one that's brave enough to say it.
I think that, well, God did give me boldness and courage. And and I don't know, that's a double-edged sword, to be honest, Cathy. I really get attacked for to be honest, they're not opinions, because I think opinions, I say nobody's got a right to an opinion. That's another misperception. Opinion is just air, isn't it? Based on cognitive biases, pop psychology, and your own thoughts. But if you're uneducated, if you don't have all the knowledge, it's a bit embarrassing. How can anybody really have an opinion if you? It's embarrassing. How, I often say to somebody, I don't have enough knowledge to form an opinion on that. And so if I'm talking, it's not because they're my opinions, it's because I've got knowledge on this area. And when I put a psychoanalytic perspective, like, why do people hate each other? What is this hate? And what I realized is it's self-hatred projected out. And nobody really wants to own that and know that, because now we have to do homework. I think with a higher consciousness, we can all of us live a much happier life within ourselves and with each other. But I think it's going to take some really, well, I think that's what's happening now. It's almost like God's had enough, revelation. Well, apocalypse means revelation. So it's almost as if God's had enough. You've had plenty of free will. I've given you all the time in the world. Some of you are trying. Some of you are trying and, not quite finding the way. And others of you, you're not trying and you're not helping. And so in the rise of human consciousness, there's going to be a sort of division in that, because you're going to have the 100 monkeys is going to tip, because you're going to have many more people now don't want war. We've had enough of it. Every time you put the television on, you go to your supermarket, what are they doing with the knives, And the more it took us all by surprise. I think we were all asleep and programmed. Then some people have woken, they have spontaneous awakenings, and some people now are thinking, I think I've had enough of all of this. My reality needs to change. Our reality needs to change. So, we go higher. Some people talk about fourth dimensions and 5 dimensions, but that's still no good if you're not going to apply it. So, do you know, the truth is, Cathy, and this might be a bit of a shock for people to hear, and I'll put myself in this same category. We've all got to grow up. That's not a disrespectful statement. It might shock some people. Well, that's what the conscious rise is. We're growing up. We're realizing that hating each other wasn't ever the way. Killing each other wasn't ever the way. And we can really have miraculous, like, who wouldn't want a miracle,
Well, what happens if we have heightened consciousness? Do we have empathy? Is there more of that?
Yeah, you have empathy, you watch your thoughts, you don't speak words that you used to. You work on a vibrational reality, not a perceptual reality. So you come away from your 5 senses and you go to your 6th sense, your intuition, and you experience this world on an energy of frequency level, which is much better. That's the way I'm teaching everybody to go. And then when you walk into situations, you can immediately feel who is the heavy energy, and then if you can, extend that person compassion and try and help them. But if they don't want to be helped, you need to know when to step back. That's not your bag. You just turn up and don't need to be a savior. But at the same time, this is an energetic world, and I think people are just waking up to that. So if we do manage to, most of us, get to this higher state of consciousness, what that really means is you wouldn't dream of saying something that you might have said 40 years ago.
You have 3 books. Which one should we start with?
Decluttering the Mind.
Decluttering the Mind.
I've
And
made
then
an ebook now, so it's accessible all around the world. For people that are quite spiritually advanced, Pandora's Panacea. But I have tons of videos on my YouTube channel. And then there's my College of the Mind, which I put products on, which are lifetime resources.
And you have self-study courses, and coaches can take that people who want to help people through this could learn from you.
Definitely. And also most of my audios are from live classes and live lectures. So you get the real energy of that, you know.
Nice. Okay. Very good. Well, thank you so much for being with me here today. I appreciate